Artcasters number 195. We're inching our way up to 200 episodes. And this should be an awesome episode because really it's all about you, because we're going to talk about YouTube communities. And I know we got a lot of people in the chat here. And like I said, this show is for you. And got a special guest, which we'll get to in a minute. But first, we'll kind of go around and introduce ourselves. I gotta find where my banners are. I'm not ready for this. Okay, so I'll kick it off. So if you're on my channel, you probably know who I am, Scott with Circworks, and that's where you can find me online at circworks.com. Also Circworks on YouTube, which you're watching right now. So probably don't have to explain that. The one thing that I want to talk about, what I usually talk about, and I'll just throw this up for Josh before he can even get a chance. But so you've all heard about my Comic Maker Starter Kit. If you're watching, if you go to my website, you join the mailing list, you get the free Comic Maker Starter Kit. And unless you've been paying attention just recently, I've just launched a new product, and I know this is a mouthful. So what I'm going to do is I will actually, in a minute, I'll post this in the chat. But I've got the Comic Maker Toolkit out right now. It is exclusively on Design Cuts right now, which is a UK company, and we have a UK guest today. But anyway, so this is exclusive to Design Cuts for, I think, the next 8 days or so. And I know this is going to sound sales pitchy, but this is the honest truth. If you are thinking about getting this, I would get it now, because I just got off a mastermind session with this group that I meet with. I showed everyone the product, and they're like, "You are not charging enough for this product." So my plan is probably to raise the price a little, but right now it's 30% off of $25, and I'm thinking of raising it a little bit. So this is probably the best deal you're going to get on this right now. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, and basically it's the Comics Maker Starter Kit, but on steroids. It's about 3 times as big. It's got tons of really cool stuff and stuff that isn't included in the starter kit and everything. So anyway, that's my sales pitch. Let's get over to Josh. Hey, Josh.
Hey, it's weird because I got the Comic Maker Starter Kit, and I had a lot of acne this morning, and it just cleared up. I have no idea how that happened. I'm not saying they're correlated, but I'm just saying, I woke up this morning and I was like 100 pounds lighter, and my acne cleared. So I'm just
I am not standing by any of those claims, but whatever Josh says is not necessarily endorsed by the makers of the Comic Maker Starter Kit.
Exactly. And if you watch this again, you should just make that a little faster, so it sounds like a really cool little subline on a ad for antidepressants or something. But no, you guys should get the Comic Maker Starter Kit. It's exciting, and I know Scott put a lot of work into it, and I also know just from what I've seen of it that it will not disappoint. Other than that, you can find my work at quarterlystories.com, where you can read my comic about faith and mental illness that I handwrite, hand letter, hand ink, and then hand to you hopefully someday in print. But until that day, you can find it housed at quarterlystories.com or on topis.io for your Android or iOS device. You can read this lovely story about depression and anxiety. So, yeah, all the good, juicy, well-paying comic stuff.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, and our guest today is Russ Leach. You can find him at russleach.com, but I'll let him kind of tell you what platforms are you on, do you have anything to promote, anything like that? Introduce yourself, Russ.
Hi there. My name's Russ Leach. You can find me at russleach.com or comicbookblackbelt.com. You can find out about a book that I'll have out next year called onlydeathcansavus.com. You can find me at Instagram, on Twitter, all the usual haunts, and I'm just hanging around. My channel's basically an insight into what I do, so it's about my processes and my artwork, and I encourage anyone who comes over to watch it to critique my work, but also show me theirs. And if there are any other YouTube channels, I'm keen to go and look at their art channels as well. So awesome. It's just a big discussion about comic book art. And I'm a big proponent of Bronze Age art, but I love all kinds of comic book art.
That's awesome. And now I would encourage everyone to go check out Russ at on YouTube, Comic Book Black Belt, because his channel is pretty awesome, and he's an awesome artist. And especially if you're, I think and you've worked for like Marvel and BBC, and I mean, I think your work is definitely where, Josh and our aesthetic probably is never going to make it on a Marvel comic, but your stuff is definitely like kind of right in that wheelhouse with the kind of stuff that they're looking for, I would think. So,
Thank you.
and I think a lot of people would really, I think they dig your stuff if they went and checked it out. So,
Thanks.
yeah. So one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on, and you brought up the topic, which is perfect, because this community here on YouTube. I mean, there's especially in comics recently a lot of comics. I think especially comic creators and I think comics in general. There is a lot of negativity going on, but at least as far as in my circle, and I think the people that I travel with, so to speak, on the internet or on YouTube, I don't know. I don't really see that. I just see so much positivity going on, and I think you are kind of the same opinion. And I recently discovered your work, you in general, from Marshall Lee's channel, Marsh Makes Art, or Marsh Makes Comics. We were just talking about how Marshall has changed everything, kept changing things, and then finally he kind of settled on something and stuck with it, and now it's really starting to work for him. And we've been wanting to get Marshall on the show for a long time, but unfortunately his schedule just does not work with the time that we record this. So maybe someday, But anyway, so I kind of discovered you through Marshall's channel, and I don't know, how did you guys kind of connect?
Yeah, in a similar way. I was speaking to Peter Palmiotti, who I'd been talking to for around 10 years on and off.
And we've definitely had Peter on the show a number of times.
Yeah, I mean, Peter's a real pro. And I meant that's pejorative. I didn't mean he's the pro. I meant he's very professional. He's a lovely guy, very good at what he does, and very knowledgeable as well. And it just happened that I ended up chatting with him and a couple of other people who happened to be in the Artcasters group. And then I got chatting to Marshall, who is incredibly approachable and very hardworking. And we just kind of hooked up. And I work on a Sunday, and he does like an early bird broadcast on a Sunday. So it just so happened that I kind of popped into his channel quite a bit, because I happen to be sitting at the drawing board working anyway. So
yeah, it probably works out since you're in the UK and he's so early. I don't know what time that is for you, but you are definitely, just to let everyone know, it's just a little after 5 a.m. where Russ is. So we appreciate you getting up. But yeah, I mean, I think that's so cool, and that's really what I just wanted to talk about. What a great comic book community, and for me and Marshall and Josh, I think a lot of us come to this through the 100 Days of Making Comics. I don't know if you probably haven't taken that challenge. I mean, it sounds like you're pretty busy, working on the professional books. So.
Well, yeah, I mean,
it's difficult for me.
No, exactly. I've been encouraged by Mike Emirates to just get on and do it anyway. My excuse was, but I'm doing storyboarding here, and then I don't know if I'm on a comic until then. And he's like, no, just do it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So maybe I should just pull my finger out and do it.
Storyboards are visual storytelling. Comics are visual storytelling.
It's all sequential art. Yeah. So if that's okay, then I think I'll probably start in September and do one actually. Cool. Because I've got work lined up. I'm trying to fit in work for my own graphic novel at the moment, but I've got storyboarding coming up in early September, and then another project straight after that. So I'll give it a go.
Cool. Now it sounds like you're pretty busy. The one thing that I was going to mention this before the show, but speaking of Marshall and everything, Marshall and I a while back he came up with this idea. Well, I was talking about how I wanted to eventually put out like an art book, And if you've watched any of my videos, you know kind of my tagline is robots, aliens, zombies, and other imminent threats to humanity. Well, the one thing I didn't have a lot of was the aliens. I've got tons of zombie sketches, tons of robot sketches, but I didn't have so many aliens. So Marshall came up with the idea of doing this challenge called Take Me to Your Leader Tuesday. And we did that a while back. It was, we just kind of did a run of like, we did a month of that, but you can start at any time, and it's basically every Tuesday you draw, for however long you want to, you draw an alien. Cool. So I just talked to Marshall today, and I think we're going to be doing that again. I'm not exactly sure when, but we were talking about, now that his channel's growing and everything, try to get more people involved. So if I don't know, Russ, if you got a hour on a Tuesday or something, you want to pump out an alien sketch or something like that. It might be cool to have you involved. So
yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, always keen. And like you're saying, the whole subject about which is where we started talking, I suppose, about YouTube and about what a great community is. None of us are blind to what's going on in comics at the moment. And there's a lot of drama going on, right. And that's part of my description in my channel is that I don't care where you came from. I don't care if you comic skate. Oh, what a dirty word! Sorry, or anti-comic skate. I'm not interested in it. It's all drama, and it all seems to be on one side or the other for the sake of it. In most part, I can agree on both sides with lots of different points, but I'm just interested in drawing, making art, making comics when I can get onto comics rather than doing storyboards or rather than other illustration projects. That's where my heart is.
Yeah, I think
that's all I want to do. And YouTube has actually, even though you've got people shouting into the void, and like I say, some of them have a good point, some of them don't. There's actually a community here of people producing art and producing comics, and they're just interested in that. Yeah. And that's what Marshall really embodied for me, and your channel as well, coming over and seeing the Artcasters. That's what it's about, and that's what I was looking for. I was looking for a place that I can listen to other points of view and people's perspectives, but I wanted a place that wasn't full of drama, and that's where I've found myself. That's where I've landed, and it's great.
Yeah. And the way I like to look at it is like the drama we talk about or whatever, we'd probably rather be making it our art say it than
exactly.
The point is, like, we have these wonderful storytelling tools at our disposal as cartoonists. So put it in your story. If you're fired up about something, write a graphic novel about it.
Yeah, definitely.
I'd rather, to me, I'm way more open-minded at multiple perspectives from that angle rather than just like angry rants on YouTube, I just read the book. So put it in your book, show like, I don't know. That's what I want to see. I want to see people who are like pissed about mainstream comics. Great, make an indie that's better and show that you can do it. That's what I want to see.
That's exactly what I'm doing. And that's not to say I'm totally pissed at mainstream comics. I still enjoy some titles. I don't enjoy all titles. I have opinions like everybody else, but the comics publishing is such a big place to be. It's a place for everyone. Everyone can be involved. And there can be comics for everyone, and you can make comics. It doesn't always have to be about superheroes, especially in Europe. You get a lot of, and obviously over in Japan, you get so many different types of comics. It's not just all about superheroes. Personally, I love superhero, science fiction, fantasy. My heart belongs to the Bronze Age because that's where I started reading books as a kid. My favorite artists are people like Buscema and Sinnott and Kirby. Although I had to mature to appreciate Kirby, but now I totally I totally appreciate him. And Stalin and people like that, and so that's where my heart lies. So obviously modern comics don't always marry up to that kind of the way my view on the approach of comics back then was that it was action, not violence. It was romance, not sex. And that people have sort of almost weaponized the idea of the hero's story, or the hero's journey, I should say. But it's still a truism. It's still something that you want to see in comics as an adventure, and that's something I hope I'll bring to my book, and it's something that I look for in other books. So, but that can come from anywhere. It can come from a mainstream book, or it can come from an indie book. But you just have to keep your eyes open and keep your mind open, and that's what's really important.
Yeah.
And speaking of, like, you had mentioned something to the effect of, I mean, basically, no matter what you're into, and of course in Europe and Japan and that's probably some of those different genres are easier to come by than maybe here in the US, but they're here. I mean, it doesn't matter what you're into, there's a comic for you. So if you're not particularly fond of whatever's going on at the big two right now, or whoever, there and it doesn't matter what you like, there are people making comics for that. I mean, there is just if you look on either Kickstarter, or if you look on Indiegogo, or whatever you're into, there is a comic book for you. So there shouldn't, I don't know, I don't see, it's not like you can't find what you're looking for.
No,
you just maybe have to do a little hunting for it, but it doesn't matter. I mean, because I'm kind of into, like, well, I like the all ages stuff, even though I would say my book is all ages, even though it's got a kind of a horror spin, but that stuff existed back, like what you were talking about back. It was more, it was more action than violence, and so, or back in the days, I think when I was collecting, everything was, because it was on newsstands where kids would pick that. So unless you did, I mean, eventually you go to the comic store and there's direct market stuff and everything. But that stuff on the newsstand was so great. And I think mine would for the most part, fit along in the newsstand, other than the fact that it's a little indie because it's black and white stuff. But yeah, I mean, and I mean, I like the darker stuff too, but it just seemed there was a point kind of where everything, it's like, these aren't your father's comics, but then everything became these aren't your father's comics, and almost like like all ages became like a bad thing, like these are kiddie books, even though they're for everyone. So I don't know, I mean, but whatever your taste is, there's something out there for you.
Well, what happened was, at the end of the 80s and the early 90s, and I was part of this as well, because I'd read books as a kid. I'd read Fantastic Four reprints, which is where my love of Buscema and Sinnott came from. But I had old comics that I'd picked up. I was reading old Eternals comics and what have you. But lots of new Spider-Man and new Avengers. Captain Britain was a big thing when I was a kid. And all these books were very Bronze Age. And actually all books then were all ages. And that's where I think things went wrong, is that when they went for the darker stuff, and I absolutely lapped it up as well. I chomped on that stuff.
No, my first comic was so ultra violent, and I had this character with this tail that had like a kind of like a spade tail at the end, and he would rip through people's body.
Oh, God.
Like, it was just like, it was insane.
But that's teenage boys, isn't it? That's that's. So I've got Killing Joke. I've got Watchmen. Watchmen is one of the finest pieces of comic work ever, as is Killing Joke, and I know people would argue with me about that, but they are of their type. They are dark, and then for some reason everything went dark. I don't know if the execs got involved and they thought that's where all the money is. I don't know why it went that way, but everything went dark, and we kind of lost the fun of how the Bronze Age comics worked. We had a little bit of fun in the 90s, but I think in general everything seems to be very morose and dark from the main publishers, and I think that's where they're losing out. And if you add that to the fact that newsstand disappeared, which is the worst thing that ever happened to comics in my personal view, not because I don't love comic shops, I absolutely adore them. I think they're great places, but you need to have them under everybody's nose. You need them under the normie's nose, so that comics are everywhere. Kids know what comics are, and they want to have them, and they're cheap as well. They've got to be affordable, and that was what they were like back then, and now they're not.
Pretty much, except for, I would argue, Alterna, which
I love
Marshall, again,
Alterna's
back to
work.
Marshall. He's the one that kind of turned me on to Alterna, and I think they're pretty much doing everything right. I just wish some of the big companies would take a cue from them, but
Again,
like I said, maybe, and I'm not even talking about the content of the books, because
no.
I'm just talking about business wise.
No, Peter Sameti's fantastic, and I love his approach. And I don't know if there's anyone in the chat that will disagree with me, but I'm happy to talk to them about it. But personally, I feel that his view on stopping people from blocking people in massive chains is right from a business perspective. I come from a business perspective.
Right.
I've been in business my whole life. I've run my own businesses, and I got to draw full time 2010. I decided to change tack, and that's when I started my current career. Prior to that, I'd been in design and production. I'd been in coding. So you don't cut off your marketplace. You don't cut people off arbitrarily. Twitter is a really weird place, as we all know. And if you've got an issue, if you don't like something, turn it off. If you don't like someone's views and they're abusing you, put the block on them or report them or whatever. But to kind of arbitrarily, potentially block so many customers, as from a business perspective, I agree with him. He seems a really nice guy. I've spoken to him a few times, and from a business perspective, he's doing the right things with his comics. And I wish the big two would do the same things, because I want Marvel to be out there and to be what they were, as far as leading the comics industry and providing comics for everybody. And it's just a weird situation, and I think business is, people talk about the pop culture aspect of it and ideology, and I actually think that's a small part of it. I think, like I say, when they took them off the newsstands, that was when things started getting awkward, or started getting difficult, and then when everything went dark, it made it even worse. And that's a personal opinion, but that's what happened for me. And I think the one good thing that's happening at the moment is we're seeing a resurgence in indie comics, true indie comics. I mean, I wouldn't consider Image to be particularly indie. They're a massive company, and they run with all kinds of stuff, and it's great stuff. But I wouldn't consider them indie. I consider independent comics people who literally, back in the day, people would go and print them off at print shops and what have you, and staple them together. That's an indie comic.
Yeah.
But obviously we've come a long way since then, and places, being able to crowdfund your comic, that's incredible. And it's really opening up the doors for so many people to get involved in the comics industry, so many voices with so many stories. And that really is what comics is all about for me, having all those different stories. So, yeah.
And I think the one narrative that gets lost a lot in a lot of the just kind of drama about the comics industry is like, there's been a major death of trade, like not trade, floppies, but there's been a real like crazy movement in my lifetime that's been an expansion of just like having full out graphic novels in bookstores, and just the term graphic novel being known by like a majority of the public. And so there has like, it's weird because like a lot of people can look at it and go like, well, the industry's dead, or it made a big mistake. And there are some missteps, but there are some really cool things happening in comics, like go in the kids book section. I never thought in my lifetime I would see that. Like, you go to the kids book section and there is an entire shelf full of every genre of story for kids in graphic novel form. I mean, Scholastic is publishing Jeff Smith, like Jeff Smith, the indie guy from the 90s, right? Like that guy, cartoon books, like put it out himself. And now it's Scholastic, and it's like, my son brought back a little Scholastic order form from school, and there's like Amulet and like Raina Telgemeier, and like I'm like, look, the only comics that were on the Scholastic order form when I was a kid were Sunday Funnies collections.
Yeah.
So
they're nailing it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
I do feel like with some of the negativity, a lot of people lose track of like all the positive things that have happened for comics, and within our lifetime, like we're living in some really good things for comics too.
Yeah.
And the floppy versus the trade, like your profit margin's just not the same. Like, so you can see why the industry like is shifting more towards the trade, because it's like the trade is just a much bigger profit margin on a business level. It's like you spend, maybe $2, a dollar printing it, and you're making 20, or you're making maybe, 18, 19 on your sale, as opposed to spending $1 and making 10 cents. It's like, I'm just saying, it's like it's a bigger profit margin. So it makes sense that, to me, that's one of the things that I feel like gets lost on both sides of the conversation, where there's people going, it's dire, it's doom, and there's other people who are like, it's all about superheroes. And I'm like, but there is like this whole, like, I mean, Gene Yang like got, I'm blanking out on the award now, but it was like one of I think it's the Yalso Award, which never was picked up by a comic. You have, Art Spiegelman has a Pulitzer. I mean, like these things, like, just don't those are things I never thought when I was a kid I would see in comics. I hoped for it, but I didn't think comics would get to that level. So to me, that is exciting. I don't know if it makes sense, but
no, definitely. I understand exactly what you're talking about, and there are opportunities now that there never were before.
Yeah,
and I think you've always got to accept that there's a changing face of any industry you're involved with, or any medium, or any form of entertainment. Things move on. I'm going to be involved in I'm not convinced personally by digital comics. I like having a book in my hand. However, however, there are other aspects of doing things digitally. So I'm, for instance, involved. I can't say too much about it, but I'm involved with a project that I'll be working on in October, which is a single panel per screen, and it's for phones and tablets. And there's artificial intelligence involved and stuff about driving the story. And so there are things change, things move on, and okay, digital comics might not be a thing, might not be, in my personal view, a goer, as it were. I just don't like the idea of it. However, the technology and the movement towards digital is opening up other potential areas of different kinds of comics that really do take on the digital format and do it properly. So things change, things move on, and you have to change with it.
Yeah, and I'm actually kind of surprised that digital really didn't take over the print market in comics. I know in a lot of magazines and things that's a different story, but it seems like printed comics are just, I mean, they're still popular, and there's still many people that would rather read printed comics than on a tablet. But so it didn't totally take over, but now you kind of have that option. And like you said, I think any way you can tell a visual story, whether it's in print, whether you can do other things with it digitally, I think just as there are, comics for everyone, I think they can be told in a medium that whatever kind of medium you prefer, I've tried to read comics on a tablet, and it's kind of cool at first, but for me, I just kind of reverted back. I don't know what it is. There's a lot of stuff that's easier for me to consume online that I would not probably consume as much in print, but for some reason, comics are different for me.
But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's an old guy thing. I don't know. It could just be that. But I know when I go to conventions, there are a lot of younger people there who are keen to read printed comics.
Yeah, that's what I know. So
I've got loads of books sitting beside me. If anybody out there who's interested in drawing, and I'm sure everyone's heard this a million times, but that's the book.
I've got a video. It's probably one of my more viewed videos, where it's basically a flip through, and I kind of approach it from the angle of is how to draw comics the Marvel way. Is it is it good advice, or is it kind of Marvel propaganda? And it's kind of both.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about it. It is propaganda. But you have an artist in there, in John Buscema, who's just he's a fabulous classical artist. He was an illustrator for advertising as well. Just the work is just fantastic.
Yeah, and some people, like, I do get some negative feedback from that title alone, and I'll admit it's a little bit clickbaity, but I mean, I think that's the fun of it. And some people, when they hear propaganda, it's like such a negative thing. But all it basically means is you're trying to push. This is like it's right in the title. How to draw comics the Marvel way.
Yeah, the Marvel way.
And Stan Lee has no qualms about saying that the Marvel way is the best way, and that's Stan Lee, and that's what makes that book so fun.
I would say, but harping back to our previous, since his name has come up, our previous conversation, that is one of the other things that everyone gets wrong at the moment, and why I think someone like Peter Simeti is so good is because Stan Lee made me feel like I was part of Marvel when I was a child.
Yeah.
Because of the way that he wrote. And I know that there's all these things about he stole stuff from Jack Kirby and what have you. And all that aside, his ability to bring everybody in, to bring the fans in, to make them feel like they were part of Marvel and they were on the inside, even though all they were doing was just reading the books.
Right.
That's so important. Keeping, not just bending over and doing whatever the fans want you to do, but just making them feel like they're involved, and that's super important. And I think that's part of why YouTube is working.
Yeah,
because it's personable,
right?
And you can reach out to people. So whether it's the drama or not, and some of those channels, I'll be honest, I watch Ethan Van Sciver occasionally, and he's quite funny. He's got kind of a radio voice, and sometimes I have to turn him off because it's just too much. It's like, oh my God, what is he saying now?
I watched
but it's okay to watch different things and take different points of view in, and you can take them in, chew them up and spit them out and say, I don't want to know about that. But some things are funny and entertaining, and YouTube in itself is a very personable thing. You can reach out to people, and that's what's great about the community, like we were talking about at the start, that I found here, is that everybody's just so damn nice. I mean, I'm on a Discord server now, which I never thought I'd be. I'm old. I'm a boomer. With the guys over at with Marshall, and he's made this fantastic community, and there's so many people helping each other out, talking to each other. It's wonderful to see it. It's like the internet, how the internet should be, It's great.
No, that's good. Yeah, it's good stuff. I've got to kind of check out that Discord. We tried to do like Discord for doing the YouTube and everything, and it didn't really work out. But I'll have to go in and see how it works as far as the chat and everything. But yeah, I'll have to go check out and see what Marshall's got going on over there. But I've used like Slack and everything, so I don't know how different it is from Discord. Yeah, it's just another. Yeah, it's kind of another thing, sort of like
another technology I'm ignorant.
Yeah. I'd probably wager to say I'm probably older than you, Russ. So yeah. Maybe. Are you actually a boomer, or are you just saying that?
No, I'm 51.
Okay, so yeah, you're a few years older than me, but not by much. I'm 48 now, so.
Oh right, okay. You're looking good in it.
That's Gen X, I guess, is what.
I think I'm Gen X. Yes, I think that's what it is. Yeah, this.
I think I am the very last of Gen X. I think, like, just by default, like on paper, I'm Gen X, but I'm like almost not, which is frightening to me. But I did, like, at the very last day.
The last day of Gen X. But that's good. I mean, and that's I don't know if that adds to open-mindedness or not. I think it probably does. Just the world is not black and white like a lot of comics. it's shades of grey, and everybody's got their own story and their own reasons. And I just think you need to listen to people and communicate with them. And one of the best ways of doing that, I personally feel, is via the medium of comics. It got me into reading when I was a kid, and I wouldn't have read the novels that I've read if I hadn't have read comics. It gave me a wider vocabulary. It never spoke down to me. I think you were talking about all ages. The great thing about all age comics is what they used to be, at least, is that they didn't talk down to their readers. So if, as a kid, if I saw some ridiculous long word in a Thor story, I went and looked it up. And then it became part of my vocabulary. So it's about reaching out. So.
Yeah,
I like to mention not talking down. I recently listened to Treasure Island on Audible, and I was just blown away by how the writer, like, children's literature used to assume that kids weren't complete morons. So that story starts heavy. It's got like real stakes. Like, there's death at the very beginning. There's sincere threat to this kid's life, like, throughout the entire story. The pirates are drunkards. They like get in brawls. Like, there is no sugarcoating to that story.
No.
And yet it's a perfect kids book story. And I wouldn't feel weird about, like, if my kid, at like age 10 wanted to read it, I wouldn't feel like, oh no, he's going to drink alcohol and do all these terrible things.
Get a hook.
and what's fascinating about that is, like, how backwards I feel a lot of all ages literature has gone, in the sense of just assuming it. I think a lot of the times it's kind of patronizing to the kid that it's written for, where it's like assuming that a kid can't handle, or a kid isn't really, like, I remember this interview with Sendak that's brilliant. You should, if anybody's out there, just Google like awesome Sendak interview on YouTube and it'll probably show up. But Sendak's talking about the problem with current kids books, and he said the people who are editing kids books have forgotten what it's like to have been children, and assume that children are perfect and invulnerable and that they're wonderful human beings. And he was like, no, children are terrible human beings who want to do terrible things and like to read, like they like reading stories that have real stakes, and like reading stories where the kids aren't perfect, where the kids are a little terrible. And he's like, the only thing worse than children is the adults. And he's like, the only thing worse than adults are the adults now editing children's books. And I was like, dude, that's brilliant. So it's made me think of that.
No. So speaking of children, I just wanted to call out this comment from Salazar Art Nation. I gave my sons and daughters some comics for Free Comic Book Day. They're 8, 6, and 4 years old. And then there's just something about holding a comic book in your hands. I tried digital comics, but really couldn't get into them. So I'm curious, Salazar, if your kids, how they reacted to comics. Did they get into them? Because I tried it with my kids, and I couldn't. They just I couldn't get them interested. But I've seen a number of kids, whether I'm at a show or a comic book store, that are into it, and it's always good. Good to see that. So
yeah, I think and this came from a way back at the idea that comic books are for kids. I think comic books are for everyone, and some kids like them and some kids don't, and some adults like them and some adults don't. And I think if you don't speak down, exactly as you're saying, if you don't talk down to them and you give them a solid story they can get their teeth into, then they'll enjoy the comics. But getting them into them in the first place, that sort of getting the hook, I think that just comes down to the kind of person that they are.
Right.
Some people like them, some people don't. My son doesn't. My son is autistic. He's high functioning, so he's Asperger's, and he's never liked comics, and was quite sort of anti-superhero, but he loves the MCU now, so he loves the movies. My daughter is actually just about to go off to university to do architecture, so has been very artistic her whole life, as against autistic. And she's never particularly been into comics either. So they're both, both sort of in one way or another like that kind of stuff, but have never been involved with them. And yet, like you say, I've been at conventions where I've had little kids come up and just grab the comics and go, yeah, this is what I want. So it's all down to, not everybody's the same, and just because you're a kid doesn't mean you're all the same. And different people, different folks, different strokes.
That's interesting. My son's on the spectrum as well, and he's high functioning. But it's like, but he got really into the Incredibles.
Huh?
And then there was this limited run Incredibles comic that I picked up for him, and finally, like, I've been picking up comics at the shop for him every once in a while. I thought, like, there's a really good run of Uncle Scrooge lately that I thought might get him. I thought maybe some of Langridge's stuff now that he's doing all ages, but nothing. And then suddenly, because it's Incredibles, he was like all about it. And it's like a 3-issue arc, but that was like a gateway in. So I'm like, well, he's about to turn 6, so maybe, because I also keep trying to get him into Star Wars, and I can't get him through A New Hope. Like, I didn't realize how much talking there is in that film. It's just, there's a lot of exposition, and I didn't realize until I'm watching a 5-year-old try to watch it and just like no interest. It's really interesting because I'm like, it's Star Wars, how are you not interested?
I think the problem we all have, we all suffer from, is that I remember going and seeing Star Wars when I must have been 10. So that had been 77-ish, yeah. And it was like nothing we'd ever seen. It was completely new and different, and that did have a big effect on the acceptance of it. What makes me smile is the way so many people like to hate on the prequel trilogy, and the bad acting in it, and actually the acting in the first 3 was pretty hammy. It's not the best in the world, and I think it's just about, it was new, it was fresh, and you'd never seen anything like it before, and sometimes a comic needs to do that in order to take your attention, but then sometimes it just needs to be something familiar, like it was with your son. So it's so difficult to measure that aspect of getting a kid into a particular type of thing, and sometimes it just takes one little hook and they're off, they're gone. So it's tricky.
I'm just gonna keep dangling hooks and hope.
Yeah. He'll get onto one of them.
My wife is an illustrator too, and we always joke that our kid, we're gonna be the reverse parents, where my kid's gonna be like, I want to try out for football, and I'll be like, no, you'll sit down and draw like a man. Like, you're gonna read poetry. You're gonna be sensitive.
Yeah, no, I had 2 kids that were very, very different. My son ended up going and doing chemistry and not liking anything artistic, and not, the score, being Asperger's, he's not particularly physically interested, so he didn't do much in the way of sports, although he did give it a go, to his credit. My daughter, however, just has been riding since she was 6, and I was able to train with her till she got her black belt in karate as well.
Oh, wow.
So
Nice.
The two different children, you couldn't have, it's chalk and cheese. But that's parenthood for you. You never know quite what's coming up.
Yeah, my kids are all very different as well. So
How many you got?
I've got 3.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, 2 boys and a girl.
150%. That's 2 is enough. Yeah.
I'm good with 1, I think.
Yeah. Good. It's a good number.
I have heard though, like multiple people I know talk about like 2 is kind of manageable. So then you're like, maybe 3, and then by 3 you're outnumbered and you're screwed.
Do you get outnumbered, Scott? Do they gang up on you, Scott?
Do they? No, not really.
No?
They're like I said, they kind of do their own thing, so they're like they don't really gang up because, like I said, they are so different that they're. I mean, obviously, they're at least the boys. That they have some similar interests. My daughter is just she's totally different. She's not into any of the stuff my boys are. Well, I don't know. That's not so true. I mean. There are some, like my kids, my boys are definitely into like video games and magic and all that.
Video games. Yeah, that's the killer. Video games.
Yeah. So, and my daughter's more into like dance and stuff like that. So, but so I was curious. I mean, obviously we're talking about community, but I did want to kind of get into a little more on. So you've worked for some of the bigger companies, and you've done some pretty well-known properties and everything. Doctor Who, Ben 10. But so now you're working on a creator-owned project. Is that?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. Is this your first creator-owned project, or is it? I mean,
technically, it is.
I was gonna say that while being, I'm not impressed by the fact that I'm not a nerd. Wait,
that was huge.
Jealous of that, actually. That's a very cool gig.
It was. I started, like I said, attempting to be an illustrator after my previous incarnations as other things in 2010, and it's part of the answer, I suppose. I don't know if they're creator-owned books or not, because I suppose they are. I did 2 books for Markosia that I'm credited, at least one that I'm credited for as sort of co-creator, or at least I'm down on the contract as being that. So, but the first one that I've actually, it's all me, is the one that I'm currently working on.
Awesome.
So, yeah,
that's a huge thing,
Yeah, it is. I've written 2 scripts, and the first one was pretty much a love letter to the Bronze Age, and there is a graphic novel by John Buscema. That's The Silver Surfer. I can't remember the name of the book, but it's basically a 1 panel per page. And I wanted to do something like that. And I'm very into the esoteric and quantum physics and stuff like that. And I wanted to kind of make something or write something that had my opinions, as it were, on the possibility of what reality is. I listen to a guy called Tom Campbell sometimes, and he's got something called My Big Toe, which is theory of everything, and it's quite an interesting theory, and again based in around real science. And I wanted to do something like that, so I wrote that script, and then I finished it. So I had it edited by Tim Quinn, who I'll tell you about later. But he used to edit for Marvel, and he edited it for me. And I thought, yeah, this is great. I'm going to do it. And I never got the opportunity because I got too much work in. And actually, it's probably the right thing to have done, because it's probably just a bit too. I wanted something more action orientated. So I wrote another script, and that's Only Death Can Save Us. And it's potentially part of a 4-book run. And what I want to do is go and get other writers to write parts 2, 3, and 4 with the characters that I've set up in part 1. So I know a couple of writers, Rick Hoskin, who does a lot of work for Dynamite and Disney, and Alan Cowsell, who works with Tim Quinn and Jason Quinn. Jason Quinn was the editor on the Doctor Who books that I did. And they're all ex-Marvel. So it's quite cool to know these people. And the reason I knew Jason Quinn was because I worked on a project with New Baby Productions, which is one of the first books I did trying to be an illustrator. And unfortunately, it only got printed in a very short run as kind of proof of concept. It never went to a publisher. And he was the writer on that. And I worked with him. We enjoyed working together. And so 5 years later, after he'd gone over to Campfire Graphic Novels in India and come back to work for Panini UK, they got the gig to do Doctor Who Adventures, and he just basically emailed me. So I think we were talking, Marshall and I were talking about this the other day. You've got to work to get work. You've got to network, and you've got to, be as good as your most recent project, get in on time, do all the good things, and the work will come. But you've got to kind of go out there and get it. You've got to get yourself into the mix, Oh,
go ahead, Josh.
Oh, we reiterate this all the time on this show, but like one of the last things you want to do is be the creative jerk in the industry, because like that scenario you just described, and we just had like a professional writer on our like last episode, and it's a very similar story where it's like he knew someone, they were on a project, kind of fell apart. 3 years later, that person ends up in a high position somewhere and hooks them up with like a really sweet writing gig. But like, once again, none of those scenarios work out if you're a complete dick to work with. Like, like at the end of the day, like nobody wants to hire somebody they don't want to work. Like if you're miserable to work with, no matter how brilliant the work is, like most people, especially when they're in-house, like they don't care. They just want their work day to go okay. Yeah. So if you're easy to work with, you're likable, and you deliver on time because deadlines are huge. That's excellent advice for anybody starting out. Because I think an art director, and like I'll tell you, when I hire freelancers, if you blow a deadline, you're lucky if I give a second shot, because like my ass is now on the line because somebody didn't meet their deadline, and that's not a good precedent to set. And then the other thing is, like, once again, if somebody's like a jerk or a prima donna, it's like there's a lot of artists out there.
There's some fantastic artists out there. Yeah. I see them on Facebook all the time. You see, and hanging around the internet, and you look at them and think, these are incredible artists.
No, there's so many people that I look at, and I'm like, I'm really fortunate to have a job, because I'm like, this is, there's a lot of talent. So like, once again, if you're kind and you treat people professionally, like it works out. It's weird.
It does. The universe has got to give it to you, but only if you put the effort in, and you kind of make your own luck by getting out there and doing it. One of the pieces of advice I thought was best for me was finished on time rather than perfect. Get it done, get the job done, and get it out on time, and meet the brief. And don't try and take it. If you're being given a script, it's your job as, say, the sequential artist to interpret that. You are a storyteller as well, but that doesn't mean that you can just do what you like. There's a script there, there's pacing to it, there's reason for it, and you have to follow that. So don't think as an artist you can just do what you want because you're the artist. You got to meet deadlines, but you have to meet briefs as well. And that's where I would say, much like yourself, having a history in being art, in art direction and production and what have you, it does make a difference. And I think, as much as I've said, there are some fantastic artists out there, and you see their work all the time. How many of them can actually produce sequential art and still tell stories well, and how many of them will let you down when it comes to the deadline? Those are the things.
Yeah. I just wanted to say, I want to call out, turn my attention to the chat, because I've seen a lot of new faces in there, and I just wanted to say welcome everyone. There's some questions about, people just kind of found this channel and wanted to know what it's all about. Before we close out, I'll kind of go in to let people know if anyone's not familiar and everything. But anyway, this just briefly. not only this channel, but this particular show, the Artcasters, it's not just exclusive to my channel. It also, my co-host Josh, it's on his channel as well. And so it kind of flips back and forth. And then we usually have a guest on, which is Russ today, but I'll talk a little more about that before we close everything out. But this is perfect that we're getting new people, because this whole episode today, we're talking about just the art community. And it's just amazing how you start these communities and they tend to grow. And here we've got a bunch of new faces popping in. You've got your regulars that always, they always show up, and we're so grateful for that. But it is really cool how these things grow, and it's almost how these communities can kind of cross-pollinate, because I've got friends, like whether we talked about Peter Palmiotti before, we talked about Marshall, the whole 100 Days of Making Comics crowd, and then Josh and Corey Kerr have the 48-hour art check. So there's all these different, and it goes way beyond us. I mean, this is sort of, but people start to find these communities through other communities, and then they kind of become, part of each other. And hopefully it's all a positive things, because sometimes it's almost like you're seeing this now. We're talking about some of the negative stuff earlier, but sometimes maybe when these communities kind of collide, and maybe there's some differences there, there's some butting heads and everything. But I think it's good for us to realize, most of the people here create comics or have a love for comics or art in general, and that stuff should be fun, So, but
yeah. I'll say, like, no one's in comics for the money. I mean, like getting paid, but none of us are in it like because we're like lawyer or artist. Oh, I'll take artist so I can make a ton of money. No, like that. So that's something. And another thing to keep in mind, just on that whole note of like kind of tying back to what Russ was talking about, where it's like you were a pleasure to work with. So when this guy got an editorial position on a big book, you were probably the first person he contacted. Mm-hmm. And like another thing to keep in mind is like the comics community is really small. So there have been times where I really empathize with people, through that I have been misjudged, that are kind of on the major labels, because they'll kind of defend their buddy.
Yeah.
Twitter, and people will take it like that's Marvel being a jerk, and it's like, no, you don't understand. Like, these people probably came up together, like worked on crappy like indies that pay like nothing, worked their way up, like fought battles for each other, like maybe ghosted for each other, like have probably done all-nighters like in the same room, like and they're just kind of defending a friend. And so that's one thing I learned really quickly, like at my first conventions, was like how small it is. So like it really is important to like not like, for instance, like start off a conversation with a cartoonist at a convention about how much you hate another cartoonist, because for all you know, that cartoonist could be like your best friend, like for all you know. And so like that's something to kind of to me, I think that's something to keep in mind in general, because and all of these industries are like that, like animations like that, like in the LA area, the people who work at Warner Brothers 2 years later work at Disney, and 2 years later are working in Nickelodeon, and they just travel around and do different shows. And so like it's a tight knit little crew, and it's not a crew to burn bridges with, So yeah.
No, you don't do that. No, my personally, I would say I don't say, if I have not got anything constructive or nice to say, I don't say it.
Yeah, that's good.
And that way, I keep my nose clean, and I have opinions. Everybody's got opinions, and sometimes I agree with some of the stuff that's said on, as I was saying with the whole Comicsgate, anti-Comicsgate, whatever. You can see rights and wrongs on both of the sides of that particular fence. But it's like if you can't say something nice, don't or something constructive, then don't say anything at all. There's no point in making enemies. Everybody's got their own story, and just because you don't agree with them doesn't mean that they don't have a valid opinion, or that there isn't a reason they think the way they think. And certainly being rude to people and horrible to people is not the way to go. Being decent, kind, polite, constructive, helpful, that's what makes a career. That's what makes you a decent person. Just get on and do it, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting because, obviously I kind of try to do my best to kind of seek out positive stuff on YouTube. But unfortunately, I mean, it is a lot of, even on the news or whatever, it's the negative stuff that gets eyes on things. That's what people are attracted to. So I try to make it a point not to get him. I mean, I had to pretty much stop watching like pretty much most of the Star Wars channels because it was just all so negative. And I love Star Wars. And there's stuff about Star Wars I don't like. I mean, I understand some of that, but all in all, I mean, it's like no one hates Star Wars like Star Wars fans. So it's like,
it's a bit like Doctor Who fans, yeah.
So,
yeah. Oh, that's kind of a really interesting question that is off topic, but I want to ask. Like, so after doing a run on a property like that, did you get met with a lot of hate? Like, why did you draw them like this? Like, because really in this episode, it's like this. Like, did you get a lot of that after?
No, I got nothing but love, to be honest. People were just Doctor Who. We love Doctor Who. So people that were buying the magazine and unfortunately, because it's aimed at the younger kids, and at the time, for whatever reason, backwards and forwards, it was mainly a boys' magazine. Boys weren't, and this is the same that happened with Ben 10. Young boys don't read as much as young girls. It's just it's a fact of life. That's nothing to do with me supposing any gender of any kind. That's just statistics. That's just the way it is. And it meant that Ben 10 was cancelled after 13 issues, and Cartoon Network were loving that, and I really enjoyed the run. And the same with Doctor Who. But everybody that spoke to me about it, whether it was online or whether it was personally, everybody really loved what I was doing and loved the idea of just reading a book with Doctor Who in. And some of the nicest things happened because I went to a few conventions, and one particular I went to a Doctor Who event, and I did some posters and was giving the posters away. We didn't charge for them, and there were queues of people and kids, and they were putting their pictures up, and I was seeing them on Twitter, and it was just a fantastic thing. So it's very rare that you get anybody that really has a gripe. I haven't come across that. Maybe I haven't spent enough time in comics yet.
I was just curious because I do know people are fragile sometimes about their properties. So
they can be, but no, I didn't get anything bad from Doctor Who. It was all good.
Encouraging. That makes me have hope for humanity. Wow. So what's interesting to me is like you're doing all of these things, yet you still have the drive to kind of work on your own thing that's like completely your own vision. Does that tie into what we were talking about, where when you're working on client work, it's important to realize like you have to hit the brief?
Yes. Yeah. You have to apply the same set of rules as you do for stuff you do for other people. Otherwise, it won't happen. And that includes deadlines are difficult with your own stuff, because if you are working for other people and that's how you eat, then obviously you have to put your own stuff down, or you have to find a way of providing a smaller period of time to do your own stuff in, so your deadlines can move. And in fact, the deadline for this has moved already because of work that I've had to take on. But when you're doing it, you still have to say, right, okay, I'm going to get X done by a certain amount of time. And because I've written my own script, there's a little bit of cross-play there where I can change bits and pieces. But I've written a script so that I can stick to it, especially if you get an editor on it, because then there's no point in getting an editor on it if you're just going to change it through the art process. So I'm trying to make it as close to the way that I would work on any other project for another client.
Are you a harder client than your clients?
Probably, yes, because I'm sitting there drawing, and you know what it's like. You're your biggest critic, aren't you? So I drew 3 pages this week, and by the end of them, I'm like, yeah, they're great. You know that there's a meme out there, isn't there, where the artist looks at his own work and he's like, yeah, I'm best. I'm the fantastic. That's the best art ever. And then 2 hours later, it's like, oh my God, that's awful. I suck. So you do go through that, but you have to kind of stop and say, no, that's done. Move on to the next one. Fix it at Inks or whatever, and move on to the next page.
Man, that's brilliant. I think that's almost as brilliant as the meme of the freelancer getting a paycheck and then crying as he lights it on fire.
I think the one I like most, there was I only saw it recently. It's just stick figures, and it was the equivalent of 2 cakes, and one cake was your art, and the other cake was somebody else's art. And you were looking at the other art going, oh my God, that cake is just so fantastic. It's much better than my cake. And then the normie comes along and goes, oh, 2 cakes. It's like, it's other people see it. John Higgins, I'm name dropping here. That's awful. John Higgins, he was the colorist, I think, on Watchmen. And one of my first ever conventions, I met him. He's such a lovely guy, and he was doing some live art, and I was saying to him that I found it quite difficult because it is quite sort of, you're in a pressure situation when you're at a convention and you're drawing and people are looking over your shoulder and you're like, oh, I got that wrong. And he said, he still can't get rid of the nerves on it. But he was talking to me about he was the guy actually that said to me, finished rather than perfect. And where were we going? That's my boomer head. It's 6:15.
The 2 cakes.
Yeah, the 2 cakes thing. That's it. And it was his girlfriend that we were in the bar afterwards, who turned around and said, you guys, you produce magic. It's like, everybody can draw, everybody can create art, but not everybody chooses to. Yeah. And some people are more inclined to, and some people are super talented. But definitely, if you go out and draw comics for a living, okay, you're in that band of you want to do it, and you've got to be proficient at it. And she said, look, you guys are talking to each other about being nervous at conventions and about drawing in front of other people. So people that don't draw or can't draw or whatever you want to call it, they look at all your work and just go, wow, that's magic. Yeah. And you can't appreciate that as an artist because you kind of want to do the best you can and you're always self-critical. But people that choose not to draw and do something else, when they see people draw, it's magic. It's like somebody playing an instrument or a footballer, you're a sportsman being really talented at what they do. It's because that's not the thing that you do, or it's not the thing that the majority of people do. So it's magic. So, always remember you're entertaining, I think, whether you're drawing a sketch at a convention or whether you're in the middle of drawing pages, you're entertain. At the end of the day, the end part is entertainment.
That's brilliant. The one exception I'd say is like there are some cartoonists that are so good that the general public would look at and be like, meh, it's not realistic. And most cartoonists would look at and be like, oh crap, I suck. There's a couple that come to mind that I was like that before getting into like art school and really learning form and trying cartooning out and realizing like how sometimes like very simple cartooning, what looks really easy can sometimes be the hardest form. And so like being a guy who I tend to stray towards more like photoreal type drawings and the guys who can really simplify form and like do to me, like doing Ben 10 actually sounds harder than doing Doctor Who, because first off, like, well, I don't know if you have to. You maybe not. But did you guys have to do style guides for that too?
Oh yeah.
So that is a world of like very specialized talent, and that's a lot of people. Like if they're looking at your portfolio, would probably be like, "Ooh, this Doctor Who stuff's amazing," and Ben 10, meh, like because they. But any cartoonist looking at it would be like, oh gosh, that sounds hard, Like we've had a cartoonist on here who did a lot of SpongeBob. He's one of the best cartoonists
Cool.
I think we've had on here.
Love
And he did
SpongeBob.
SpongeBob, and he did Scooby Doo, and Scooby Doo is hard as hell. Hanna-Barbera style guides are so tough that the side profiles don't make any sense. Like it's but like it takes this crazy craft of skill. So there's so I have this like mixed feeling where I'm like, I think you're right, but I also think sometimes there are guys who don't get credit where you're like, oh no, you should be looking to this dude because this dude's amazing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's easy to hold up a Jim Lee piece and go, oh my god, look at that, that's fantastic, and then hold, like you say, hold up Scooby-Doo and go, yeah, but but it's definitely true that first off, the style guide I had to adhere to on Ben 10 was quite expansive, but they did, what I was quite impressed with was that they didn't just give you flat images and say you have to adhere to this. They also gave you tips on how to draw him.
Good.
Which was quite cool, which I used. And then, of course, just because you're drawing bendy arms and bendy legs doesn't mean you shouldn't understand anatomy or the way people move. It's key. It's hugely important. Even more so, like you say, when you're breaking it down and making it very simplistic, you have to get that movement and stay away from that term that the computer games use, Uncanny Valley, which you can see in all kinds of comic strip, in all kinds of different styles. If you see Uncanny Valley, it's usually because the artist isn't as proficient in anatomy, in weight, and in movement or expression of face.
Yeah.
And you can look back on things like, for instance, on some of the Bronze Age stuff, where the faces were quite simple, but they expressed really, really well.
Yeah.
And I think that's key.
That ties into the Kirby appreciation we were mentioning earlier. I think as you mature as an artist, you start seeing what he was doing, how difficult, and not only that, you learn his turnaround rate, like on pages, and then it's like, okay, you're.
He almost auto drew, didn't he? He'd start at one corner of the paper and just go all the way down to the other corner. You'd think, how on earth does he do that? He was another level. He really was. And then you come down to people like more realistic styles like Neil Adams or John Buscema, and people like that were, just the art, just the ability that they have, and I think that's what I drive for. That's what I strive for, is that kind of feel, but at the same time something that I've appreciated and realised later on in life, because of matured, is looking into it and seeing the economy of line.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time when I was younger, I would try and draw, and it would be so detailed. I'd try to put so much into it, and I'd wonder what was missing. And the whole point is what was missing was what was not missing, as it were. Where's the white space? The economy of line that. So, for instance, I've got this book here. I keep going on about John Buscema and Joe Sinnott, but they just have. So, if you look at this book, okay, this is Fantastic Four, and it instantly you might think, oh, that's quite detailed, but no, it's just the economy of line in that work is stunning, and to be able to tell the story and get the energy and movement into those panels by just doing enough, that's where it's at. And if you look at people like Hellboy, Manola, Manola's got a style that I could never possibly try to imitate in any way, shape or form. However, I utterly love his work.
Yeah.
Because there's just something so pure about it. And that's something that I've been able to do as I've gotten older and matured, is able to appreciate so many different styles. I was a bit of a comic strip fascist when I was younger, as in, it's got to look like that, and if it doesn't, then it's rubbish. But it's like, no. You have to appreciate so many different types of art and so many different styles.
Yeah.
And actually, I was I was picked up by Marvel in '95 via the New Talent Scout. Back then, you could send stuff in via the post, via snail mail, and he came back and was positive and said, "Yeah, love your work. You know, we'll start distributing it." And that was about the time of Chapter 11. So although there were British artists working for Marvel, I don't know quite how it worked out then, but certainly it didn't work out for me. And actually, looking back on my work, I don't think I was ready.
Yeah.
I don't think I was mature enough. I don't think my work worked in the right way. And now I think it does. I'm still not the finished article. No artist ever is. You're always learning, always looking for new ways to make your work better. But I've matured so much by comparison to then. I just was not ready for it then. And I probably wasn't ready for it 5 years ago, to be honest, but having the experiences that I've had and being able to work on the projects I've been able to work on has meant I've been able to develop myself to a point where I'm at least comfortable with saying, yeah, give me the job, I could do that.
Yeah.
Whether I could do it or not, I don't know, but at least having enough confidence to say, yeah, let me have a go. So I've done Doctor Who and I've done Ben 10. I've done my own books, or I've been involved with other teams on my own books. I haven't had a chance to do a big 2 edit, monthly or anything like that. I've been working on Draw the Marvel Way, which was just such a thing to work on because I loved the original book, How to Draw the Marvel Way, and this is kind of like an homage. So it meant that I could draw Marvel characters, and I could draw them for Marvel because it's Marvel and Hachette that produced the book. But I still haven't been able to get involved in an editorial, in doing a monthly story.
Yeah.
So if ever I got the chance, wow, yeah.
What is that? Because I've heard that before. Draw the Marvel Way. What is
it's
that?
a magazine. It was a magazine that was run in UK and Europe.
Okay.
And it's a 100-issue magazine, and I started in issue 8, and I've been working on. Well, it's finished now, as far as my work is concerned, and it's tutorials and tips and things like that. And it's definitely an homage to the old how to draw comics the Marvel way, but obviously the title's changed, so it's How to Draw the Marvel Way, and it was every 2 weeks. And you got like a free gift with it as well, like a pencil or a rubber or felt pens or whatever. And I worked on that with Mike Collins, who's a Doctor Who artist and also has worked pretty much for everybody. And the colorist on that was James Offreddy, who is a stunning colorist. So
That's awesome.
Is that something that's been collected or will be collected? It sounds like
I asked them. Yeah, okay. I asked them that, and they don't know yet. But yeah, that would be if I could see that collected. Wow, what a book that would be!
Popular is, How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way is just a staple. Everyone. To this day, people refer back to it.
Exactly,
everyone's got almost every comic artist I know has a copy of it.
Yeah, and I still that's one of the first art books I ever bought. It's
I had a copy when I was in college. This is before the internet, and I don't know how readily available it was, but they had a copy. They had a copy in the library. I checked it out and I Xeroxed that whole thing, and I had, when you do that, it's not back and front every single page. It took forever to do it, and I've got it in this 3-ring binder, and I had that for a while. I should have just kept it, even though I eventually got the book, but I should have just kept it to have because it was. But yeah, so
I did the same thing.
Yeah.
I didn't keep it in a binder. I wasn't as organized as you. Yeah. But yeah, I photocopied a whole bunch of pages out of that book until I got a version myself. And yeah, obviously it can't hold a candle to the original book, but it's fun, and it does have some really good tips, and it's got some nice tutorials in it, and it shows you things like figure drawing and scale and perspective and that kind of stuff. Right. And I thoroughly enjoyed doing it. It was a real buzz to be able to do it. It may be the only chance I get at a Marvel book. So being able to draw so many Marvel characters over a period of 4 years, 3.5 years, was a great thing. So, but I'm comfortable with saying, right, well, I'm going to do my own book now. So
Yeah.
I don't feel the need. I always wanted to work in the bullpen, when I was a kid, like the Marvel bullpen, Stan Lee, all those artists. It's like I just wanted to do that, and it's part of my drive. But also part of my drive was being good enough to be paid to do a professional job.
Right.
So
here's
being paid to do it,
Right.
and unfortunately the bullpen doesn't exist anymore. And Marvel, I don't mean this to sound the way Marvel doesn't exist the way that it used to.
Of course not.
When I was a kid, it's just other things changed, but it isn't that thing anymore.
Really have
So
a lot of
I'm comfortable to do my own thing now. So
yeah, you don't have a lot of in-house comic or even design firms anymore. I mean, it's more and more spread out, so that bullpen environment just is more and more rare as things go. I think the closest thing I've seen in a workforce was like, I had a friend who was working for Titmouse for a little bit, and it felt a little bullpenny there. But that's an animation thing, and like I said, who knows how long that'll go, So
that's right. I think we were talking about community. It's the whole point of the video.
Yeah.
This is a bullpen.
Yeah.
Because we're all artists working together. We might not all be we're obviously not working on the same project, or we're not working for the same publisher, but we're all artists working together, and we can get on and do things like this where we can chat, which is exactly what you'd do if you were in an environment, a studio environment. From what I can tell, they didn't really have a bullpen anyway. It was mostly editorial and where you were fixing stuff. So it was a dream. but this is pretty cool. I can't complain about life and career. So
Yeah, I know before kind of Hangouts went away, there was like a 100 Days of Making Comics Hangout, I think, and it just ran, and people could just pop in anytime they wanted. Cool. So, and I don't know now that Hangouts isn't a thing. I don't know if I'm not sure if that's something I don't think you can really do that here on StreamYard. I'm not sure. Plus, I think you're limited to the amount of people, but that was kind of a cool idea because it did kind of give you a chance to like, oh yeah, I'm going to sit down and draw. I wonder, and I'm sure you could put out a tweet or whatever, or you could probably initiate. And I think that's something we'd all it'd be good for us to do, is sort of initiate that type of thing, because sometimes I don't even think about it. I'll just put on a YouTube video to kind of keep me company. So I'll be watching like you or Marshall, but I'm not interacting with you. Whereas, maybe instead of just watching the video, I could say, hey, who wants to I'm working on a project, who wants to draw with me? We'll just open a chat or something like that.
That's great as well, because as we're talking about the community, it brings you closer to people who are going to read your book, because or the project you're on, because you can show your screen at the same time, or you can show what you're working on, so they can feel part of it as well. So that's why I say I think there's the opportunity now to really engage with people, and the whole aspect of having YouTube communities or larger communities within the comic book industry is there's this argument about business and community and what have you. The comic book industry is an industry. It's a business. We're all here to make money from our art, to make money from our stories. We're primarily here to tell stories. Like you say, you don't go into comics to make money. I do other things. I do other jobs so that I can do comics.
Yep.
It's all part of production. It's all part of art. But within that comic industry, within the business, there are people, and people make communities. And that's what's going on YouTube now, I think, and that's what drew me to YouTube, just watching all these videos. And I got the negative videos and the positive videos, and so some of the negative videos are funny, just like comedy is comedy, but it drew me into YouTube, and then I went looking, because although some of those videos are funny, some of them are also a bit sort of, oh god, more bad news or more drama, and you just wanted to engage with people and engage with potential readers and potential people who are going to like your work, but also other artists and other creatives, and just engage in a sort of in that bullpen environment where we're all kind of working together as that drive of we're all looking to tell stories. So yeah, that's as as a comment on the whole thing, that's what drove me to come into YouTube, and what a great environment it is.
That's good. I like one of the things I like about like our group on social media and on YouTube is that it's kind of a rising tide raises all ships type of group.
Yeah.
And that's actually pretty rare even in comics. Like I had this brief period where I moved to Portland with my wife because it's like the cartooning center and for indie stuff. And there's two pretty fairly known publishers there and like just a ton of cartoonists, and they have a cartoonist month. Like the city of Portland has a official cartoonist month, and you go to gallery shows and it's cartoons. Like it's comics everywhere. So we moved there, and then I found out that I didn't particularly get along with all the indie cartoonists because a lot of indie cartoonists were like kind of pretentious and mean, and like it's just a weird, like you go and like one of the groups, I'm not going to name names, but I do remember they were all sitting in a living room talking crap about Craig Thompson. And then they do a gallery show and Craig Thompson shows up because he was an old friend of theirs, and they stopped talking crap. And I was like, this is nonsense. Like, and the second he left the room, they were like, like do another panel with blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I don't really like I personally just don't like that kind of thing. Cause it's like, first off, like just success envy, like just bitterness, that kind of stuff. So, but one thing I was going to say that drew me to like online, like how I met Scott was through Kevin Cross. How I met Kevin Cross was when I lived in Portland, and we both freelanced, and like I freelanced for like 15 years. And the whole time of doing freelance, there's this isolation that happens because you're primarily like working at home and you're staring at a computer or at a wall. And then by the time you're off work or whatever, everybody else is at a work schedule. So it's like, it's a weird, very solitary thing. And the great thing about like the internet and like the online community and the comics community in general is like, you know, like Scott's in Arizona, I'm in California, like Corey I do a show with, and he's in Idaho. So it's like, it's like all over the place, all over the world. And like, yet you can kind of have these great engagements and conversations, and you can find a community that kind of fits you, which is good. And like I said, the thing I like about our community is that rising tide thing, because I don't see a lot of that happening where it's like someone leaves the room and people are like, that guy's a dick. You know, like that kind of stuff doesn't happen in this community. And I really admire that, because that is rare. That's really rare.
Like life is too short for that kind of behavior. And it's, you know, negative energy just saps you. You know, it's easier to be happy. And don't get me wrong, you know, I'm not sitting here delirious. It's 6:34, so I'm all right. Yeah, I've woken up now. No, I'm not. You know, blind to the fact that life happens. You know, and we've all got problems, and we all seem to, you know, want to get over those problems and have to deal with those problems. But you know, being negative about it just makes it twice as bad. And you have to try and be as positive as you can be. And certainly from a career perspective as well as life, you know, just like I was saying earlier, if you can't say something constructive or decent to someone, then don't say anything at all. You know, there's no point in injecting negativity into it. And like you say, there is a lot of envy, and it's part of the psyche of creatives that they have to work through and get rid of. And we've all suffered from it. I've suffered from
100%. I was a beast.
Yeah. Where you look at other people's art and you go, oh my God, that's just so good. Or you look at someone's art and go, why is that getting printed? It's rubbish.
Yeah.
And you don't know their story. You don't know how they got to that point, what sacrifices they made. You know, okay, they might have got there really easily just by knowing people. You know, it might be the publisher's daughter is going out with them or something, or you know, whatever. You don't know the story. You know, you don't know how they got there. So don't make judgments on people and other people's art just enjoy it, and don't compare yourself. Don't compare your own career. Don't compare your own art to other people's.
Yeah.
There's no harm in going and looking for inspiration and being impressed by it.
Yeah.
Or joining in the appreciation for their success or for their art. But you focus on what you need to do, and by focusing on what you need to do, you'll make it happen.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, 100%. That's
Yeah.
Speaking of 100, so Ronnie says the 100 Discord is booming. So I guess that's probably what they're doing now in lieu of the Hangouts thing they had running is the Discord. So I'm gonna have to check that out.
Have to.
But
too.
yeah, that's.
I don't know if I'm on that or not.
Yeah, I don't know. It definitely would be something we probably want to look into. But I don't know. We're past our hour and a half. So do we want to start going? Is there anything else that you want to add to the conversation before we kind of start wrapping everything up, Russ?
No, I think we've. I'm sure there'll be another time to converse. Yeah, we've kind of covered how great YouTube is, and how even more important, how great the community is on here, and how people are. So, which is, like we're saying, the most important thing: telling stories and being decent to each other. That's it.
So Josh, you want to tell everyone where they can find you and everything? I know somebody in the chat did want to know where to find you, and the links are in the description. But here it is where you can find Josh. But where else can they?
There's a link right here. And then you can also just go to quarterlystories.com, which will take you to the same page, but right to Quarterly Stories, which is the graphic novel I'm currently working on, about faith and mental illness. It's autobio, indie stuff, so beware. But yeah, check it out. And let's see. Other than that, just I will be occasionally floating on Scott's channel every other day, and you should definitely get the comic maker starter kit, because
we can get to Russ and I'll close it out.
Okay. Go buy the comic maker starter kit, because Scott did a bang up job on it and you won't regret it. All right.
Yeah, buy it. It's really good.
Yeah. Well, that's it. There's a little. I'll explain all that in a minute.
Yeah, you can find me at russleach.com or at comicbookblackbelt.com. My new graphic novel, which will be out next year, will be Only Death Can Save Us, and that's at onlydeathcansaveus.com. And at both places, you can sign up for my email subscription list, so that I can keep you informed about what's happening on the project, and also other bits and pieces like stuff on the channel. I'm at Comic Book Black Belt, the YouTube channel, but you can also find me on Twitter and at Instagram, and just generally around the place in Facebook. Just come look for me. You can email me if you want from my website. I will answer all kinds of questions, and I want to engage with people. So do sign up for the email list if you can. I won't be dropping emails in your inbox and filling it up. It will be once a month, or if there's something that of importance to tell everybody. Other than that, I'll keep it short and sweet. So that's it. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, and I would encourage everyone to check out Russ's. Definitely check out Russ's YouTube channel, because there's a lot of great content on there. So, and also the website and all that stuff. Just everywhere Russ is, go check him out. So you're on my channel, Circworks Art Labs. If you want to find me online on my website, you can go to circworks.com. And what these guys were talking about as far as the Comic Maker Starter Kit. Now, there's a little, maybe I made the names a little too close, but so there's two things. There's the Comic Maker Starter Kit, which that is actually free. And I will put this thing up. It is completely free. So basically what that is, it's the toolkit for creating comics. There's tons of cool stuff in there. It's free. If you go to my website at circworks.com, you can sign up for my newsletter. You will get the starter kit free. But if you want a little more, or a lot more, I should say, I have the Comic Maker Toolkit, which I just launched. That actually is a paid product, but it's just massive. I know this is a kind of a long link, but right now it's exclusively through Design Cuts. So if you go to designcuts.com, just search Comic Maker Starter Kit. If you go back, there's a link somewhere in the chat earlier, and you can click on that. But basically, it's got fonts, it's got brushes, it's got word balloons, and sound effects, speed lines, halftones, templates, and tons more for writing and for drawing comics. Basically everything you need. And what I heard from a lot of people after I launched this is that I wasn't charging enough for this thing. And so right now, and again, this sounds sales pitchy, but I'm telling you the truth. It's 30% off of $25 right now. So it's $17 for a limited time. It's got eight. Actually, I'm looking at the website right now. It says 8 days, 1 hour, 6 minutes, and 52 seconds, 50 seconds to go on that deal. And then I'm planning on raising the price just because everyone says I'm practically giving this thing away. But so now's the best time to get that if you want to get that, because I don't think you're ever going to get cheaper again. So anyway, there's that. But I also want to talk. There was in the chat, there were people wondering, kind of some new people wanted to know what the channel is all about, or probably more specifically the Artcasters. So as far as my channel, basically I just we talk a lot about comics. I talk about this is all about community. So just a lot of stuff you guys want to talk about, how to make a living doing art, just all the insider stuff. There's a lot of that kind of thing. And I'm working right now on a series that's going to take you all the way from the beginning of making comics, for everything from coming up with ideas to the finished product. That's a little ways off, but I'm working on it. But as far as the Artcasters, what that is, it's just a weekly show that we do. It's Josh and myself. It's been going on for a while. We've had some lineup changes, but Josh and I have been doing it pretty consistently for a while. We usually always have a third chair guest. Today it's Russ. Next week it'll be another guest. But if you want to know where we're going to be, this channel switches back and forth from Josh. This show switches back and forth from Josh's channel to my channel. So, and sometimes it's on a different time. I know that can get confused. I don't want to be confused. Basically, just join the Artcasters mailing list. There is a link in the description. We don't spam you or anything like that. All we do is about 30 minutes before we go live, we send out an email and we'll let you know whose channel we're going to be on, what time, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's that. So I don't know. This is a great show. I definitely want to have Russ back on again, or even if I can maybe join you guys sometime if you're on Marshall's channel or whatever. But cool. This has been great. So thanks for coming on, Russ. Thanks to everyone in the chat, and we will see you guys next week on Josh's channel. And I'm going to end this, and there's probably going to be a little bit of a lag, so you might hear some behind-the-scenes stuff before this thing goes out.
The dreaded lag.
Yeah, that's